the relationship between me and my mother was just gone. She would talk to me and it was just like, don't say a word to me. I hate your guts. Like, I want nothing to do with you. And like, it was more, not only because she made me do this, but I was angry at myself because I allowed her to make me do it.
Yeah.
And then it was the whole thing, like I said, of it has to be kept quiet.
It's a dirty truth with Deontay Young. Hit a main course, yeah, the entree done. Pull up on the gang, all the fly day ones. Tune in, come and see what Deontay done. It's a dirty truth with Deontay Young. Hit a main course, yeah, the entree done. Pull up on the gang, all the fly day ones. Tune in, come and see what Deontay done. Like, just vibe with it.
Okay, guys, welcome to launch week of The Dirty Truth with Deontay Young. I am Deontay. Today's episode is called I Hated Myself and features my amazing and awesome wife, Billie Jo, a.k.a. The Blonde Bombshell, a.k.a. Billie Bad Ass, a.k.a. Mrs. Young. She is an author and podcaster who previously hosted the Confessionals Outcomes with BJ podcast, and she has a new one upcoming. And now for a super dirty truth spilling discussion, here she is. Now, just so you guys know, Billie Bad Ass is also an author. And not only has she authored a book, but she's authored short stories. And the whole gist and the nature of her book and her short stories is based on some of the most devastating things that's happened to her. And that's what we're going to really cover today mostly, and see how it can change a person for the better, turning your trash into treasure, so to speak.
Yes.
So the first thing was something that happened when you were 14 years old. You wrote a short story about it.
Correct.
And just kind of explain the nature of that. You don't have to go into too many details, but just, kind of the nuts and bolts of what happened when you were 14.
Well, I was sexually assaulted at 14, almost 15. And it was by somebody that lived in the neighborhood, somebody that I had grew up with, not that I was, really friends with or anything like that, but it was a neighborhood guy. And so he was a couple years older.
Okay, so now what actually happened in that situation? Like, what was the outcome of that? Because obviously, that's a crime. So what exactly happened, and who did you tell initially? Well, what happened with all that in the aftermath?
Well, actually, it started with my mom noticing. She was saying that I had a gap, and she kept pressuring me like that I was having sex on my own. And one day I just got mad and told her that I had been raped, and she went and confronted. Once I finally told her, she went and confronted the guy's aunt, that's who he was living with. And I guess he grew up with a lot of trauma in his life, and my mom kind of felt sorry for him, and it was more, well, she's dressing provocatively and stuff like that. But it started out, I was always tomboyish, so I would wear, I would be out there playing with the boys. I wore boys' clothes, like jeans and t-shirts, and I always had my hair pulled up in a ponytail. So that year I had lost quite a bit of weight. I was, chunky, never like really horribly overweight, but I was chunky. And so that year I had lost some weight. So I started wearing, we called them mini skirts then. They're nothing like what people wear today. I mean, they were like halfway down your thighs, in between your knees, and but my mom pretty much blamed it on me because I started wearing those type of clothing. So it was like, it's your fault because you shouldn't have been wearing that type of clothing. But he later went on, like, his aunt promised it would never happen again. Him and I lived in the same building. He was on the first floor, I was on the third floor. So in order to get to where I go, there's a second floor landing. So he would always stand there and watch me go up the stairs, even after this happened. He did it before, but I never really knew why he was doing it. I just thought he was a weirdo. But after the rape happened and stuff, then he would stand there on that second floor landing and he would just torture me every day, because he would just tell me it was going to happen again. And he would say things like, "Oh, you look good today," or just crazy stuff.
Yeah. How are you able to really go through your life, especially at a young age like that, and not just have like the fear of God in your heart? Because I mean, that sounds very intimidating. Even as a boy, I would be terrified, because it seems like no one was coming to your rescue.
Well, like everybody would probably think, well, why didn't you go back to your mom and tell her that he was still doing this? But it was like she pretty much took his side the first time. So then I felt like, well, she's going to take his side again. She's going to, he's going to deny it. He's older, all those things. And as far as the question you asked about going through life, is I kind of just put it in the back of my head. I didn't think about it too much. I just, would put it in the back of my head, but I always was angry. I always felt hatred towards him. I felt hatred towards my mom. And I learned to, as the years went on, to protect myself by not putting myself in positions that it could possibly happen. I would not be alone with people guys or something, or I would not go places that I knew it could possibly happen again. Yeah. I also put this attitude on in this front, like I could just beat the whole world, which I felt was going to intimidate people and make them not do anything to me. And it made me very angry person, because I felt like I shouldn't have had to do that.
And so, like, to really exacerbate the situation is the fact that you were, your mom was basically the only person, because your dad had died, like right around that same time.
Yeah.
And so that was already a traumatic experience, because you said you had a great relationship with him.
Yes.
And then this situation happens, and I can't imagine feeling like no one is there to hear you and feeling alone in the world at 14 years old. That just sounds really, really like frightening, and really almost, it seems like it should almost be a crime that no one that's supposedly an adult will come to your attention. Did that ever cross your mind, or did you just like kind of like shut down and just kind of do your own thing and say, well, forget them?
Yeah, at that point I kind of just shut down, and I just felt it was weird, because you kind of feel like maybe this is how it's supposed to be. You really don't know at that age. Your body's changing, your hormones and everything's going. So you just feel like, and you always as a child are raised to believe your parents.
Yeah.
So and trust your parents. That's who is going to protect you. And I just felt like, I felt in my heart I wasn't protected, but it was like she's protecting me from something. And it was rough, because like I said, it was something that I always put in the back of my head and never wanted to bring that out and share it with people, because I just felt like really dumb, because it was like, okay, well, this happened to you, and everybody that knows is pretty much telling you that it's your fault because of what you've done. So I felt like ashamed and embarrassed myself.
Yeah.
So I really didn't want to share it with nobody else, because I was like, well, they're all going to say, well, I'm the wrong one because I was wearing these clothes. And like I said, they're nothing like some of the stuff that girls wear today. Yeah. But no matter what the case, I don't feel that if I walked around naked, that doesn't give him a right to do that.
Yeah. And on top of that, you make a great point, and it's something that most people may not consider, but adolescence is difficult under the best of circumstances, and you are going through a metamorphosis of such, right? Because we all know that when you're a teenager, your mind is in a blur, your body is in a blur. All these things are happening that you don't know what's going on, and then this happens. So this actually ended up segueing into the next trauma that happened to you.
Yes.
Basically a year later.
Yeah.
And that was something that was like haunting on a whole different level. So explain that.
Yeah. So over the summer, after the rape happened, I met a guy, a young boy, because we weren't really grown-ups then, we were still young, and started dating him, and it felt so weird, but then I felt so protected because he was a butthead. He was, an asshole. He was the biggest jerk there was, but he always made me feel protected.
Yeah.
And I always knew that this guy would eventually leave me alone. The one that had raped me, like, he's gonna leave me alone because this guy's part of a gang. He's this bad kid running with bad people, and he's gonna make me feel protected. And so he did eventually. I believe, I don't know for certain, but I do believe that the guy that raped me got beat up really bad, and I feel like he's the one that, he's the one that done it.
Right.
And so then I started feeling different, kind of nauseous and stuff. My mom never ever 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 talked to us about pregnancy, sex. Like, it was like unheard of. Like, if you said anything about, well, how's this go or whatever, not even like, she didn't even discuss my menstrual with me. Like, I didn't know. My grandmother pretty much was like, yeah, every girl has it. Whereas you talk to my mom about it, was like, she didn't want to talk about it. So when I got the sickness and stuff like that, I really didn't know what was going on with my body. And I had asked one of my friends, and she was like, yeah, you're probably pregnant. So I went and took a test, and it came back positive. But I didn't tell my mom because I was so scared, because I'm like, she's going to kill me, this and that and the other.
So let's back up. So that means that you actually had sex with this guy?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So what was it that prompted you to be able to do that, because you already had been devastated by when the other guy forced you?
It was a difference of, he didn't force me. This guy didn't force me. He was very gentle. Even though he was young, he was just gentle, and I felt like so protected. Yeah. I don't know how to explain it. Like, I just felt like my dad's not here anymore, but this guy, he's going to protect me.
Yeah. Okay. And so what happened after that, when you were feeling nauseous?
Yeah, so my friend told me, yeah, you're probably pregnant, and I'm still like not understanding everything, And so I went and took a test, got a test from the store, took it, and it came back positive. But I still didn't tell my mom, because like I said, I was so afraid. I kind of in my mind was thinking maybe it'll go away, because I didn't understand all this. I didn't even understand how I was feeling. So I just kind of kept it from everybody, and then I started showing. And my mom, was like, you look like you're pregnant and this and that and the other. So I finally told her that, I was. And she was mad. She was angry, screaming, hollering, calling me all kinds of names. And
so how did you feel? Did you feel you want to keep the baby, or... because you're 15 years old at this time, so I don't even think you really understood what that entails, because even people in their 20s don't really understand that.
Yeah, I really didn't know. I was just confused. I just assumed that I was going to have it. I didn't know about other options and stuff. Like, we didn't learn that in school. Of course, my mom didn't tell me, and she came to the school to pick me up, and she said, we're going to a doctor's appointment. So I'm thinking, okay, well, we're going to this to see about the baby and see, was I wrong? We pulled up to an abortion clinic, which at the time I didn't know that that's what it was. I'm still thinking it's the doctors. And I see all these people out here with signs, and they got like babies dead on it, and all this crazy stuff, and they're screaming stuff, and we're going in there and they're screaming at me, and I still don't get why are they screaming at me? Like, what is going on, And then we went in, and you have to talk to like a counselor. And we went in and talked to this counselor or psychiatrist or whatever she was. I don't know. You sit in the room with them and talk to them. And I guess they make everybody do that. And she was just telling me, like, this is she explained to me what it was. And I said, well, I'm not doing that. And she goes, well, your mom and I both agree that it's the right thing because you're so young and, this and that and the other. And she's telling me that, that I'm thinking, well, I'm not killing my baby. And, she's like, oh, no, it's not a baby yet. She's like, it's not a baby till it comes out of you and it takes its breath. And, I'm looking at her like, what are you talking about? But she just like kept ensuring me. I did not get it done that time. I eventually went back 5 more times before I got it done. And every time my mom screamed, hollered, cussed, threatened to beat it out of me and everything else. And so finally the 6th time I got it done. And I remember the day going in there and getting it done and laying on the table, and yet another person lied to me. And like I said, at this time, I didn't know they were lying to me. These are adults. I'm just thinking that they're telling me the truth. And I remember laying there and crying and telling the lady, like, well, I feel it moving. And she's saying, oh, no, that's just butterflies in your stomach because you're nervous. That's not a baby inside of you. And by this time, I'm almost 5 months pregnant. So It's definitely a baby.
So once again, the adults fail you. And see, one thing we have to remember, you're 15. You're 15 and quite naive, as most 15-year-olds are, or shall I say all 15-year-olds are. And you're depending on the people that are supposed to be in positions of power and people that supposedly know better. But really, this was a means to an end. Your mom just flat out didn't want you to be pregnant and didn't really take your feelings into account because, like grown-ups do, they pull rank and they say, listen, you're my child. Whether she said it or not, it was implied that
she said it too. There was no doubt, like, I can make you not have this baby. I brought you into this world, basically I can take you out or, whatever. And I just didn't understand it all. I think the worst part came when we came home and I was told not to ever tell anybody. And I was not to discuss it with anybody. And the one friend that I discussed it with, I had to tell her that it was a lie, that it was wrong, that I took a test and it was negative. And that was heartbreaking because it was like I have nobody to talk to about it. And I remember laying there just crying my eyes out. And she's like, just dry up the tears. You'll be fine. And, you don't discuss it. We will not talk about it. Like I couldn't even talk about it to her. Yeah. And it was like I had no outlet. I had no way of getting this off my chest and even feeling any kind of relief. And it was just, once again, push it in the back of your head and forget about it and you'll be fine. And that made the relationship between me and my mom horrible. I wanted absolutely nothing to do with her after that.
That's such a devastating situation to be in because, like, to me, I still see that as a form of abuse because you were misled and it's still your body. Yes, you're a child, but still, no one is taking into account what this is going to do to you mentally, emotionally, psychologically for the next 10 years, 50 years, the rest of your life, basically.
Yeah.
Like, no one ever took that into account. Now, as a parent of 2 daughters, I can understand not wanting your 15-year-old to be pregnant, but I'm a product of a 15-year-old girl being pregnant. My mom was 15 when she was assaulted. You weren't assaulted with the thing that turned into your pregnancy, but it's still kind of the same thing where my grandfather was trying to force my mother to have an abortion and my grandmother wouldn't hear of it. And I just really feel bad for that version of you because, like I said, you feel like you're alone in the world. So everything that happened the previous year, this is piled on top of that. And those things, you can't undo those things in your mind. You carry that with you forever.
Oh, you definitely
on
do.
Some level.
I still, to this day, and I'm going to be 51 tomorrow, still to this day, there's times I'll have dreams of a baby screaming, why did you kill me? Like, it haunts me a lot. And for the longest time, I blame myself. Like, how could you be so dumb and let somebody talk you into doing this? And, I hated myself, which made me hate the world. If I can't love myself, how can I love anybody else? And I mean, like I said, the relationship between me and my mother was just gone. She would talk to me and it was just like, don't say a word to me. I hate your guts. Like, I want nothing to do with you. And like, it was more not only because she made me do this, but I was angry at myself because I allowed her to make me do it.
Yeah.
And then it was the whole thing, like I said, of it has to be kept quiet. You can't tell anybody. You can't talk to anybody. You know, I always felt like all through my life I had to hold everything in because of those two incidents.
Yeah.
Now it's like anything that happens, you have to keep it a secret. Like you can't tell nobody. And it's horrible when it starts coming out and you start feeling sad and depressed. And I mean, I even got to a point where I hated, like I didn't even want to live at times because it was like, what's the purpose? You know, if you have to feel like this, you have to feel so angry and sad and hurt and all these things balled up into one. It's like, you hate the world.
Yeah,
and nobody wants to walk around and hate the world.
And it's amazing how sometimes the people that love us the most can end up being our biggest enemies in certain moments.
Yeah.
And if this is like leading you to have thoughts of suicide, especially at a young age, I mean, that's such a prevalent thing now, and I'm sure it was then, but just not as widely reported. And it like I said, my heart bleeds for you because I can only think that if it were me, as a boy or a girl in a situation like that, but the parents are the ones to have the final say, I mean, that's just devastating because like there's no conversation to be had with the person whose body it is. I try to tell parents now that, listen, just because they're your child, they're not your property. Now, I understand that you have to give them guidance, but give them guidance. Don't try to control them because, that can always flip back on you. Now, I know this situation obviously haunted you, in the very immediate aftermath because it was so devastating, especially the process of getting this baby sucked out of you and only to be told that it was butterflies. I can only imagine how that must have been. But I know that a few years later, you had another traumatic situation where you got pregnant and you carried this baby almost to term. And then it ended up being another calamitous situation with a hospital. So how did that go down? Paint the picture on how this happened.
Yeah, so
You were about what, 18, 19?
I actually had her on my 20th birthday, so I was 19 when I was pregnant.
So you got pregnant when you were 19?
Yes.
Okay. And this is in your book?
Yes.
Okay, what's the name of your book?
A Mother's Hopeless Prayer.
Okay. So yeah, we actually at Dirty Truth Publishing, we published that book.
Yes.
We want to make sure we say that. Yeah. Came out in August of 24. But so walk us through how this whole thing happened. This is now, about 4 years after the abortion.
Yeah. So I got pregnant and, even then at that age, like I kind of felt something was, weird. It didn't really click to me what was going on again, but you're thinking 4 years later and I'm not even thinking that anything because, with her dad, it was more of a one night thing and I didn't think anything of it, and so I got pregnant. I did everything that I was supposed to do this time. I went to the doctors. I never missed an appointment. I tried to eat healthy. I'm not going to say that I always did because I love this steak and baked potato type thing and hot fudge sundaes. But I mean, for the most part, I did everything that I was supposed to. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I didn't do anything that a mother shouldn't. And I went to every appointment. I never missed an appointment. But around, I would say, so I had her at 35 weeks. So around 33 weeks, I started going to the emergency room. Like, I can't feel her. And, well, I didn't know it was a her at the time. But I can't feel the baby. Like, things are starting to feel weird because she went from this jumping all over my stomach, especially when I would get in the bathtub, to not moving at all type thing. Like, it was getting less and less. And so I started going and they kept sending me home. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just a first time mom and, you're just excited and, you just want the baby out of you and all mothers do this. And, they found every excuse in the world, but they kept sending me home. And then one day we went, which would have been March 17th of 1994. And I went and once again, they was getting ready to send me home, said everything was fine and they didn't see any reason for me to keep coming there and, the whole your crazy spill and made you feel like you was crazy thing, And I was getting dressed, and this doctor walked in, and he said, where are you going? Like, they told me I was going home. He goes, oh, no, we're going to do an ultrasound on you. So I'm like, okay. I was confused, like, okay, this makes no sense. They're sending me home, so why is he deciding to do this? And so he did the ultrasound, and as he's doing the ultrasound, he starts turning the screen. And, I'm still not thinking nothing, so I'm like, okay, well, what is it? Can you tell me if it's a boy or a girl? And, like, he's just dead silence, and he just keeps turning the screen. So I'm, like, looking to see the screen, he just keeps turning it more. And then finally he jumps up and he says, I'll be right back. And he comes back in with all these doctors and nurses and everybody, and there's like all these people standing in the room, and they're like looking at the screen, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? And he would not tell me what was going on. And then finally you just seen people writing stuff, and he just was like, we think your baby's heart is enlarged. And I'm like, okay, what's that mean? And he's like, well, we really don't know yet, so we're going to take you and we're going to do further testing. So they take me in this huge room, and there's like large TV screens. Like at this time, we didn't have like big screen TVs. These were huge. And it was monitors, and then they came in with all these people. I mean, there was so many people in that room, and they just all had like clipboards and notepads, and they were all just writing stuff. And when they were done, they just told me that she was only, they told me she wasn't going to live. This was at University Hospital. And they was just like, there's nothing we can do. And they were going to send me home to deliver her. And they just told me that, once you go into labor, she's going to be born. She's going to be dead. There's nothing we can do for her, yada, yada, yada. I went into a screaming fit. Started begging, pleading, cussing, screaming, hollering, all that lovely stuff. And they said that they would do a test. They would keep me and do a test the next morning called a PUPS test. And I guess it's where they draw fluid or something from the umbilical cord. And it would tell them more of what was going on, but not to get my hopes up, because she was not going to live. She was sick, and, this and that and the other. And then we got all the way up to the room and got everything together, and they came in and was like, yeah, the person that normally does the PUPS test is on vacation, ain't going to be back. And here again, what am I supposed to do? So they finally got me hooked up with Metro. They transferred me the next day to Metro and to do the PUPS test. We didn't even get the PUPS test done. As soon as I got there, her heart rate stayed at 20. So babies fluctuate up and down, their heart rate. And hers wasn't. It was just flat 20. So all of a sudden it was like, hey, you got to get a C-section right now. And they did a C-section, and they pretty much told me the same thing. Like, she's not going to live. She's going to come out. She's probably going to be dead. And if she isn't, we can resuscitate her. But, even that, your baby's really sick. She's not going to live. So she ended up being in there. She was born on March 18th, my 20th birthday. And she ended up being in there for 6 weeks. And she came home, and she's healthy now, and she has 2 children. And
okay, so how did that experience affect your life? Because I mean, that's just another thing. I mean, that's not necessarily a normal thing, especially for them to say, oh, just flat out, she's not gonna make it, and then you could have easily just took that and just ran with it.
Well, I did run with it, and I ran with it in a different way. Like, I ran with it of, this is my punishment from God for having the abortion. Even though, like I said, I still at that time didn't even understand what I did as an abortion. I knew what it was, but like, I still didn't grasp the severity of it. But in my mind, this is God's punishment. And I just kept praying, like, God, please, this is not this baby's fault. What I did, I can't go back and change it, but please don't let this baby die, and, all these things. But it bothered me more in that sense, because I felt like I was being punished because of the abortion. So, I mean, I, once again, start hating myself. Like, this is your fault. This is, this baby's going to die, and it's all your fault because of what you did before. And I, again, like I just felt like I had nobody to turn to. Yeah, people would call, people came up there, but I just felt like I had nobody to turn to. I had nobody around me had those type of problems. Everybody else's babies, my friends and everybody's, was born healthy, so nobody understood. There was one nurse there that took care of my daughter who talked me through a lot. She was really, really good with my daughter. So that helped a lot, is having that. But as far as, like, my mom would just say, "Oh, it's going to be okay. You just have to pray. It's going to be okay." And I even had one of the doctors at university tell me before she was born, before we went to Metro, "Well, there's no reason to cry. You're young. You can have another baby." And it was like, I don't want another baby. I want this baby that I've carried. She was 5 weeks early, but I've already carried her 35 weeks. Like, I don't want another baby. And, that's the kind of things that you go through with doctors, you see, because they've seen it all. They've seen so much death. And, to them, that those simple words they're saying as simple words to them, but it's not simple words to me. No mother wants to hear that. So once again, I did go through like a whole bunch of depression, sadness, angry at myself.
Okay, so you had these very traumatic things happen to you over the course of several years, from adolescence all the way into the beginning of your adulthood. Over the past, couple decades or so, what have you been able to make of those situations in terms of how do you view them now? How have they affected your life when you got to be later in years? And have you ever gotten closure with your mom over that situation with the abortion?
So with my mom, yes, I did get closure. She passed away in 2006 from pancreatic cancer. So she got to tell me sorry and explain to me why she made the decision she made. As far as the rape goes, she really didn't have an excuse except for that she felt bad because he had had such a rough life and she didn't want to see somebody go to jail.
Your attacker had a rough life.
Yes. So that she really couldn't even give an excuse, But as far as the abortion, and by this time I'm a mom, so I'm understanding a little better of where she was coming from. Listen, she was a single mom trying to raise 2 kids on her own, and it's hard. And here you are going to bring another child in here for her to raise. And my age was a big factor in it. And, I would totally agree with her when it comes to that, being a parent. The thing I don't agree with is forcing somebody to kill their baby. And, I can say that I forgive her for it. I can say I accept her apology for it, but I'm never going to forget it, And she understood that, she understood the reasons that I would scream, "I hate her," you know what I mean? And stuff like that. She understood the reasons why I said I could never forget it. Yeah. No matter what, even though you're laying pretty much on your deathbed, I can never forget that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, it like my heart bleeds for you. It's so devastating. How have you been able to turn this into any kind of positive, or have you been able to?
Well, to be honest with you, a lot of it, it took me up until now to, in my later years, like really late, 49 and up, to kind of work through it. This past year, 2024, I would say was probably one of my biggest healing moments of forgiving myself, because for so many years I didn't forgive myself. And it was like, it's time for me. But then I started writing the short stories. I wrote the book. I did a lot of soul searching and thinking about things in that process, a lot of things came out that I had forgot about. Other things that happened, you know what I mean? So there was other things that happened that wasn't quite as traumatic in my life, but they came out, as doing that. But I wanted to be that person to help people, to give somebody who was maybe going through that, or maybe a mom who was going to make that decision to force her child to do it. Like, talk to them and let them know how you feel. One thing about it is a man or a boy or somebody who's never had an abortion is never going to be able to express or explain how that person feels afterwards, because you instantly feel it.
And this is exactly what I mean when I talk about the dirty truth and like unleashing your dirty truth and using it in the service of other people. So when I talk about turning your trash to treasure, this is a perfect example. Like you said, since 2024, you really kind of doubled down on like kind of looking back on your history and seeing what is still affecting you. Like I say all the time that we might be done with the past, but the past is not done with us. And a lot of times we think that we're past something and we're just not. So in this case, you were able to write a book about the situation with your daughter.
Yes.
And then you were able to do these short stories, which were very difficult. Like you said, you were getting emotional. I got emotional when I was reading and proofreading them. And it was really hard to read and to really kind of wrap my mind around these are things that you actually dealt with for real. And it's not really, when you say dealt with, what it really is still dealing with on some level, even if it's subconscious.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'll never stop dealing with it. There's never going to be a day that goes by that, even though if I sit and say I forgave my mom and I forgave myself, I'm still going to have those feelings.
Yeah.
It helps when you talk it out. It helps when, especially like I said, that if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I went through the same thing, or my daughter's pregnant now and I want her to have an abortion, and I could talk them out of that. It's such a hard topic to talk about too.
Yeah.
Because you got people who's just like, abortion's abortion, and that's not a baby, because like they was telling me, like, it hasn't taken its first breath, and all these different things that people are telling you and making you believe that it's okay. The way that woman would feel, even as a woman, if I had been a woman, the feeling that I would have got from that would have been devastating. But as a child getting it done, it was even worse, because I don't even know how to fix these feelings that I'm feeling. Like, as a woman, you at least learn how to cope with the feelings that you're feeling. As a child, you don't know. Yeah. I didn't know. I'm like, why am I feeling like this? Why did I instantly start crying when it was done? Why did I just feel like horrible all over after it was done? I couldn't even make myself understand those things because I was a child. Not to mention, your hormones are going crazy at that time. So your emotions are already going crazy, and now here you got this going on. And so it helps, like I said, if you can talk to people and help them not do the same mistakes. Because I felt like if there was somebody who could have talked to my mom and said, hey, this is how she's going to feel, I don't think my mom would have forced me to do it. She may have still wanted me to do it, but I don't think she would have forced me to do it.
Yeah, so you've already done the important work, or at least you've already started the important work of using your dirty truth to serve other people, and using problems and turning them into opportunities. Because by you doing that book and by you writing these short stories, if you were really to double down on that, whether it's doing speaking engagements or anything like that, I mean, you could be a coach, whether it's online or in person, of people, because this is a very prevalent problem. And when you think about all of that stuff, so that stuff is like horrible, absolutely terrible, terrifying, but it's something that continues to happen and is going to happen in perpetuity. It's going to forever happen to people period, point blank. They always say there's nothing new under the sun.
Yes.
That's correct. And this is the thing, whatever happened to you 30 years ago, 35 years ago, it's happening right now. It'll happen this week to people, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And you would be able to take that trash and turn it into treasure by being able to, in some cases, prevent this stuff. Because when you gain influence, it's because you were able to impact someone's life in a positive way.
And even if somebody who was one of those people standing out there with those signs or screaming the things they were are listening to this, and just know that everybody that walks in there, there's always a story behind it, regardless of what it is. I mean, I know that there's some women out there who use it as birth control. I know that some women just do it just because they don't care. But though the way those people made me feel that day, you scarred me for life. And pushing a sign of a chopped up baby and stuff like that in front of people's face is not the answer. Have a discussion with those people. Sit down and talk to them one-on-one. Say, hey, can I take you for a minute and say some things to you? But not screaming baby killer and all those things that they were screaming, and like I said, pushing the signs in your face, not even caring that I'm still a child myself. They don't know why I'm there. I didn't even know why I was there the first time, but so even people like that, if it can help people like that to stop doing the things that they're doing, stop, because you don't know if that woman that's going there to do that. And like I said, I totally disagree with it 100%. But we don't know people's circumstances and why they get it done. It could be some woman who got raped. It could be some woman who got raped by a family member. It could be that child, they was told that child would live a horrible life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You really don't know the situation. So don't go jabbing in people's faces and shooting them down. Like I said, even if that I get that they want to stop it. I get that they want to, get their point across. But go pull that person to the side and say, let me talk to you. You don't have to call them names. You don't have to scream in their face and call them names and stuff like that. Talk to those people. You might get somebody to do. You'll probably come closer to getting somebody to stop doing it that way than you will screaming and hollering in their face.
Yeah, and Lord knows that I've made a lot of mistakes as a parent, but I will tell you this. A big problem with parents, and I've seen it all over the place, is that parents like to have one-way conversations with their kids as opposed to two-way conversations. If we can get kind of normalized two-way conversations where me as a human being, even if I'm 14 or if I'm 44, I actually have a voice, that could really start to be a part of the solution instead of perpetuating the problem.
And that made me as a parent I did the same thing. My thing was scream, holler, you're going to listen to me no matter what, so you pass it down from generation to generation. And it took a lot of years. And just recently, I can say you helped a lot. Just talking to you and being with you and understanding that this is not the way life's supposed to be. You're not supposed to hold everything in. You're not supposed to just push it to the back of your head. Anybody else I had been with, I couldn't have that conversation with them. It would have been, oh, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. The same thing that my mom would say. I don't know if they didn't care enough. Not saying that they didn't. I don't know, because I don't know their feelings. I wasn't inside their body. But it just came across as that, like, you'll be fine.
And the crazy thing about this is that this is actually a real problem in the world that people don't even realize. When you see a lot of lunatics and nutcases doing crazy things, a lot of it is because their emotional trauma is being held in.
Oh yeah, I believe that.
Because think about if people could really talk and be heard. I know that sounds cliche, but really everybody wants to be heard. I mean, I don't care the most powerful person. Donald Trump wants to be heard. He definitely wants to be heard.
And that's a big thing too, is, a lot of the things out there, even with drug abuse, we can sit and say, oh, they're, crackheads, they're this, they're that. But at the end of the day, they have a story behind it.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know if that person had been abused. You don't know if that person had been drugged and molested their whole entire life, and that's why they're a drug addict.
Yeah.
The same thing with mental illness. You don't know what that person's been through in life. And until you know that person's story, you have to really be careful.
Yeah.
Because you can push them over the edge. And, you know, there's been plenty of times throughout life where I felt like I was being pushed over the edge. And not saying that making light of anything that I went through in life, but there's people who out there who's endured way worse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they had nobody. You know, I still had people around me. It was just I was told not to share it with anybody.
Yeah.
But those people didn't even have people to turn to. I mean, you think about the young kids who's left in foster care, or, you know, and they're passed around from here to here. You don't know what happens to those children.
Yeah.
And they have nobody to turn to. You know, it's very sad, and it's a cruel world out there. But a lot of it changed, like I said, when me and you started talking, and then we dated, and then, you know, all the things that went on. You let me know that saying things like, spit your dirty truth out, get it out, let people know your dirty truth.
Yeah.
And also knowing that you don't have to hold things in. I can talk to you. I can have a conversation with you. You're not going to come back and say, oh, yeah, that was years ago, don't worry about it. Or that's what most guys would say to girls.
Yeah. And that's ridiculous, because, I mean, we're all human, and there is something that would trigger any of us, you know, even the guys that say, oh, that's a long time. Trust and believe they have something. And this whole thing about people covering things up because of shame, or because it's not convenient to put the family's name and that kind of, no, that's just garbage, because all you're doing is just you're perpetuating something that can turn into a raging inferno. It's like I used to always tell people when I was selling insurance, if you have a leaky faucet, you can fix that leaky faucet if you get to it quick enough by spending a couple dollars at the drugstore. But if you let it linger for even 8 months, then you might have to get a contractor to come out, because the problem has gotten so much bigger. And it's the same thing with all these emotional traumas that we go through. And this is the kind of thing, when you see these school shootings and all that kind of stuff, that's usually the end result of something being held in. And that's the thing people don't even understand. Even doing heroin, people probably get caught up in following the pack because they can't be heard at home. So they're like left open to the world. Now, this might seem like gloom and doom and all that stuff. This might sound like a woke agenda. You know, miss me with that BS, or in this case with that bullshit, like people would say, because this is real for everybody. When trauma comes for a particular person who previously would say, oh, that's nothing, they want all the sympathy in the world. Just look at 9/11. There's people on that airplane or in those buildings that was thinking like, oh, the world is not like that. But they were screaming just like everybody else when it came down to a trauma that affected them.
And people need to realize that everybody handles things differently. You know, going back to, you know, feeling like I didn't want to be here as a young teen and as an adult. I never thought of suicide, like committing suicide, but I just didn't want to be here. Like, I didn't want to live it. I didn't care if I lived anymore. But I never thought of suicide. But everybody's different. Some kids would have, you know, committed suicide because of something like that. So everybody's different. Everybody handles things differently. Everybody expresses themselves differently. And it's really sad that, like I said, that people like make fun of people or just brush them off, because you never know, that person you brushed off today might not be here tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know.
And I'm you know, I got to tell you, I'm so grateful for the evolution that you've undergone. And of course, I try to have my own evolution. I feel like you evolve me every single day. I do want to ask you this very, very important, actually a couple questions. Number one, if you had your choice, what type of energy would you like to have around you?
Positive, enjoyable energy.
Yeah,
you know?
Those are things I would say. And like what I also tell people is that I would prefer to have self-aware energy, and
That's true.
That's leading me to you, because you have developed such a great self-awareness. And whenever you can find anybody that has great self-awareness, I mean, they can be the greatest people in the world, just really. But I don't think people realize that there is such a small percentage of people that are self-aware. That's the first thing. And the second thing I want to say is, how has all of that trauma that you've dealt with, including some of these knuckleheaded boyfriends and just like horrific circumstances, how would you say that has affected you in a positive way now, presently, based on all of that? Because when I say dirty truth, I mean things that are embarrassing to talk about, things that you don't want to admit. That would cover all of those things. People that could judge you and make fun of you for. How would you say that has possibly changed you for the better, or elevated you because you had those experiences?
It definitely made me grow. It definitely made me, each relationship I was in, because there was times I was a horrible person to the person I was with. I'm not even gonna lie. The things that would come out of my mouth, because I was angry and I hated life and I hated myself, and I just couldn't be nice to people. When you wake up and you hate yourself and hate being around yourself, that's bad. When you look in the mirror and say, I don't even want to be around me, so no wonder nobody else wants to be around me. But they helped me grow no matter what. I'm thankful that they were in my lives for nothing else, but they helped me a step further. They each gave me something to make me a better person. Whether it be they were such a dick to me that they made me see that this is not what I want and I don't deserve this, or people who actually had a conversation with me, which was rare because you were like the only one, but there was others that would try, that I think cared enough about me to try to have conversations, and I wasn't having it. Like I didn't want to have those conversations at that time. I just wanted to be this, I hate the world and I just don't want to be nice to nobody, and I'm just gonna, have this chip on my shoulder the rest of my life, and I don't care what you think or nobody else thinks, and I'm gonna make everybody fearful of me. And I really did that's not me. That's not.
Yeah, and that's why I always tell people, never apologize for any previous version of yourself, because it brought you to where you are now.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, those men, every person that I had dated in my life, or even talked to, not even so much dated, but guys that I have talked to, they each brought something to make me be a better person, no matter what. And I have to be thankful for that.
There's no better mic drop moment than that.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful. This is officially your birthday now.
Yes.
But when people hear this, it's going to be
way past my birthday.
But I just want to thank you and tell you that I just love you from the bottom of my heart.
I love you too.
You are so magical and amazing to my life.
And thank you for always being there for me and helping me. If it wasn't for you, I don't think I would be the person I am now. I don't think I would be able to continue to grow. I think, even 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I was at the point to where I was like, I'm just so done. I don't even care, and that's not me. I'm a loving and caring person. Like, I love to give. You always tell me that I give too much. Like, I'm always doing for everybody. There was points in my life where I didn't want to do for nobody.
Right.
And I wouldn't.
Well, you've done a lot for me, and that's the dirty truth.
Well, I love you.
I love you, babe. So, of course, I have a very special fondness for Billie Bad Ass, Mrs. Young, and she really, really spilled her dirty truth. And there's something to be said about self-awareness. It's one of the most important things we can ever have. But I do want to remind you all to embrace your dirty truth.
It's a dirty truth for the Let's go.